The next morning, Mark handed me a divorce notice. My hands shook as I held the crisp papers, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This was the man I had shared 10 years of my life with, the man I had trusted completely, suddenly discarding our marriage like it was nothing. "I think this is for the best," he said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "You're rich now, and I just want to be realistic about our future." I stared at him in shock. "You're serious?" I whispered. "Completely," he replied, folding his arms. "You have options now, and I just want what's fair." Fair? Fair didn't feel like it had anything to do with this. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal, but beneath that, something else began to rise. Determination. I remembered my mother's words from years ago. Wealth can bring out the worst in people, but strength comes from knowing your worth. My mother had always believed in me, and now more than ever, I realized I needed to protect myself and my inheritance, but also make Mark understand that he could not manipulate me. So I made a plan. I wouldn't fight him openly, not yet. I would stay calm, observe, and act strategically. I started documenting everything: his sudden interest in my bank accounts, the way he tried to influence my decisions, and his attempts to meet with our financial advisors without me present. I also began speaking to a lawyer, discreetly. I didn't want Mark to know that I was serious about protecting myself. I wanted him to believe he had the upper hand, while I quietly prepared my defense. At the same time, I started thinking about my life beyond Mark. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was freedom, opportunities, and security. I realized that for the first time in years, I could live for myself without answering to anyone else's selfish desires. But Mark wasn't going to give up easily. Within a week, he started pushing for a quick settlement, claiming he deserved half because we were married when I inherited the fortune. He even suggested I sign papers immediately, implying I would be foolish to argue. I knew better. Signing anything would hand him the victory. Instead, I smiled calmly, agreeing to consider it while internally building a strategy to turn the tables. Little did he know, he was about to meet a side of me he had never seen before. A woman strong, independent, and unwilling to be exploited. That night, as I sat by my mother's old piano, I whispered softly, "You thought you hit the jackpot, Mark, but the game isn't over yet." Mark thought he had won. He assumed I would panic, sign over half my inheritance, or beg him to stay. But he didn't know me, or the strength my mother had instilled in me. I started by playing along, giving him small victories to keep him overconfident. I pretended to worry, asked him questions about how we could split the fortune, and even let him attend meetings with my financial advisors. Every time, I subtly planted information to test his reactions and discover his true intentions. Within days, patterns emerged. Mark wasn't just greedy, he was reckless. He had friends and lawyers who encouraged him to push harder, hoping to corner me into a settlement. But each move he made, I carefully documented. Phone calls, emails, even casual comments over dinner, they all became evidence for the moment when I would reveal the truth. Meanwhile, I began reclaiming control of my life. I invested in ventures my mother had always wanted me to pursue: real estate, a small business, and charitable foundations. With every smart decision, I could feel Mark's frustration building. He was used to me being passive, and now my confidence and independence were threatening his plans. One evening, Mark came home with a smug look. "I spoke to your lawyer," he said. "You should really consider my offer. I can make this easy for you." I smiled sweetly, hiding the fury boiling inside. "Thank you, Mark. I'll think about it." But I wasn't thinking about giving him anything. I was planning, and the plan was simple. Let him overreach. Over the next week, Mark tried to manipulate our friends, our family, even my own advisors. He believed he could pressure me into surrendering. But instead, I started using his own greed against him. I leaked small hints that I was planning major changes in my fortune, new investments, charitable donations, even a travel project that would make half of his scheming irrelevant. He started panicking. Suddenly, the man who had tried to control me through money was desperate, attempting to read every move I made. And that was when I decided it was time for the next step. One night, I called a family meeting, inviting Mark, my closest relatives, and our financial advisors. Everyone gathered, expecting the usual tense conversation, but instead of discussing a settlement, I calmly presented a full picture of everything he had attempted, every lie, every demand, every underhanded move. Faces turned pale as I revealed screenshots, emails, and evidence. Mark stammered, realizing the trap he had walked into. I wasn't the naive wife he thought he could manipulate. I was a force he had underestimated. And just like that, the balance of power shifted completely. Mark realized his strategy had backfired, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The day had come. I had spent weeks quietly gathering evidence, observing Mark's behavior, and building my strategy. Now, it was time to face him and the world with the truth. I invited Mark to the grand living room, where the sunlight streamed through the tall windows. My closest friends and a few family members were already there, along with my lawyer. Mark walked in, wearing his usual smug expression, unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. "Good morning," he said casually. "I hope we can talk about this like adults." I smiled, but it wasn't the soft, loving smile he remembered. It was calm, confident, and edged with steel. "Yes, Mark, let's talk." I handed him a thick folder. "Everything you tried to hide, every attempt you made to manipulate me, every shady plan, you'll find it all here. I thought you deserved to see it for yourself before we move forward." Mark's eyes widened as he skimmed the documents, emails, financial statements, even messages to his friends about how to pressure me into settling a settlement. For the first time, the confident, entitled man I married looked small and exposed. How did you, he stammered, trying to regain composure. I watched, I listened, and I prepared. "You thought you could take advantage of me, but you underestimated me. And now, everyone here knows the truth." He glanced around the room, realizing all the eyes were on him. My friends and family exchanged knowing looks. He had tried to make this a private takeover, but I had turned it into a public revelation. Mark swallowed hard. "This doesn't change anything," he said, his voice trembling. "I still deserve." "You deserve nothing, because I am no longer the woman you think I am. I inherited more than money from my mother. I inherited strength, wisdom, and the courage to stand up for myself. And I will not allow anyone, even you, to take that away." I paused, letting my words sink in. Then I calmly continued. "I've already decided how to manage my inheritance. I've invested in projects that matter to me. I've created opportunities that will change my life for the better. And as for you..." Mark's face went pale. He understood what was coming. I said, "You will leave this house. You will pursue your divorce if you want, but do it without claiming anything from my fortune. And if you ever try to manipulate me or threaten me again, you will face legal consequences. I promise you, I am prepared to protect myself in every way possible." The room was silent. Mark looked like a man stripped of his armor, exposed and powerless. He realized that the jackpot he thought he hit was actually a trap. and the woman he tried to control had become untouchable. Without another word, he turned and left, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed in the room like a final declaration. The past was over, and I was free. I sank into the sofa, letting out a deep breath. I had won. Not just the battle over money, but my dignity, my independence, and my life back. After Mark left, the house felt different, lighter, freer, full of possibilities. I realized that the inheritance was more than money. It was a chance to rediscover myself, to create a life I truly wanted. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding my routine, investing in projects my mother had once dreamed of, and reconnecting with friends I had neglected over the years. I traveled to cities I had always wanted to see, took cooking classes, and even started a small charity in my mother's name. Every step reminded me that my life was finally my own. I also focused on healing from the betrayal. It wasn't easy, but I refused to let Mark's greed define me or my happiness. I surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared, who celebrated my achievements without expecting anything in return. Slowly, the anger and hurt turned into strength and confidence. One afternoon, as I walked through my mother's favorite garden, I smiled at the flowers swaying in the breeze. I whispered softly, "Thank you, Mum. You left me more than wealth. You left me courage, wisdom, and freedom. I promise I'll honor that." Life had changed, but I had grown stronger. I realized that the true fortune wasn't money. It was knowing my worth, standing up for myself, and refusing to let anyone take advantage of me. Mark was gone, and I didn't feel the need to chase him or dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on building a future filled with joy, love, and independence. I discovered hobbies, passions, and dreams I had ignored for years. I traveled, laughed, and even found new friendships that enriched my life beyond measure. And while the scars of betrayal remained, they were no longer painful. They were reminders of my strength and resilience. I had faced greed, deception, and heartbreak, and emerged victorious, empowered, and free. The inheritance had brought change, but it was my courage, intelligence, and determination that truly transformed my life. And as I stepped into this new chapter, I knew one thing for certain: I would never allow anyone to define my worth again. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered to myself, staring at the thick envelope in my hands. The letter had come just that morning, and its contents were shocking beyond my wildest dreams. My mother, whom I had always thought was frugal and cautious, had left me her entire fortune. Every property, every bank account, every valuable item, mine. Overnight, I had gone from being comfortably middle class to extremely wealthy. I never expected this. Mom had always been private about her finances. She never flaunted her wealth, and she never made me feel entitled to anything. Yet here I was, staring at a future filled with luxury I had only dreamed about. I called my husband, Mark, immediately. I thought he would be happy, maybe even excited for me. But the moment I mentioned the inheritance, I noticed a change in his tone, a sharpness, a coldness that hadn't been there before. "Wow, that's something," he said slowly. "That's great." Something about the way he said great made my stomach twist. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Surely he was just processing the news, right? But over the next few days, his behavior grew more suspicious. He was suddenly interested in every small detail of my finances. He asked questions like, "How much did she leave you exactly?" And, "Do you know the taxes we'll have to pay?" At first, I answered calmly, thinking he was just curious. But then came the demand. "I think we should reconsider our marriage," he said one evening while I was making dinner. "Maybe it's better if we, part ways." I froze. "What? Mark, why would you even say that?" He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was calculating. "It's just timing, I guess. This inheritance, it changes everything. You deserve someone who can handle your new life, someone who appreciates it. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was